What's happening, everybody? The SEC football schedules are set for 2025. Who's got the easiest path and who has the roughest? We'll dissect it all. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what is happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along on today's show. We'll run through the 2025 schedules released by the SEC. Also, we got some news going on around the conference as LSU starting quarterback announces he's coming back another season. And our sit-down interview with Kyle Kennard, a defensive end from South Carolina, who was just named the SEC Defensive Player of the Year. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to Everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And this episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. All right, let's dive into it as the SEC announced the football schedules for all 16 SEC schools in the 2025 season. Of course, we know that you knew your opponents, you just didn't know when you were going to play them all. And so now we know. So let's dissect it as we dive into it. We're just going to run through each schedule very quickly to just kind of see who's got the easy path, who's got the tough one. Alabama, they open at Florida State. When they scheduled that one, that certainly looked like a behemoth, but Florida State was one of the worst teams in the Power Four this year. So we'll see what they look like next year when Bama opens there. Then they come home for Louisiana Monroe. They get the return visit from Wisconsin after going up there last year, and then an open date. That's about as good as you want for Alabama. Like, you'll be somewhat tested by Florida State, Wisconsin, but you should win both of those. New quarterback working into those games, though. It could be a challenge, but it all sets up for September 27th, a road game at Georgia. So it's the return trip. Playing Alabama hosted Georgia this year. They will go to Athens this year. Then they come home for the revenge game on October 4th against Vanderbilt. Next week, they're at Missouri and then home for Tennessee before they go at South Carolina. That's a tough stretch there. I mean, we'll see what Mizzou looks like when a new quarterback. Home for Tennessee. Again, Nico Iamaleava, another year seasoned. And then at South Carolina, who looks loaded with Lenore Sellers. Then it's an open date. Home for LSU, always an interesting one. Home for Oklahoma. They owe them a revenge game. Then it's Eastern Illinois, and then you finish at Auburn for the Iron Bowl, where weird things always happen. So, if I'm just kind of looking at it, I mean, it's not an easy schedule for Alabama, but it's navigatable. And I would say for Kalen DeBoer, the expectation should be 10-2 at minimum, and you should be a playoff team. That's the expectation. But I think it's doable. Arkansas, open with Alabama A&M. Then you get Arkansas State and Little Rock, two nice little warm-up games. If Taylor Green is back, they should be rocking and rolling. And then you're at Ole Miss September 13th. Tough one right out of the gates. Then you're at Memphis. That's no gimme for a non-conference game. Then you're home for Notre Dame. What in the world is that game doing on September 27th and not, like week one? But that'll be interesting. Notre Dame coming to Fayetteville. Then you get your open date. You're at Tennessee, home for A&M, home for Auburn, and home for Mississippi State. So you get 3 straight home games if you're Arkansas. And then a tough backstretch of the schedule. You get the open date, then you're at LSU, at Texas, and home for Mizzou. Look, Sam Pittman, that's a pretty tough schedule for you. The Memphis, the Notre Dame non-cons, and then road trips in the conference at Ole Miss, Tennessee, LSU, and Texas. Can you go 2-2 in those? Can you steal 2 of those? Again, A&M at home, Auburn at home, Mississippi State at home, Missouri at home. I mean, those are ones maybe you should take care of business. We'll see what A&M looks like. But I don't know, maybe 7-5, I'm saying, ceiling there for Arkansas. It's pretty tough. How about Auburn? They open at Baylor. It's a nice little test out of the gates. Home for Ball State, home for South Alabama. Then a pretty tough one to finish September at Oklahoma and at A&M. That's your open date. Then you get back-to-back toughies at home. Home for Georgia, home for Mizzou. At Arkansas, home for Kentucky. At Vandy, open date, then Mercer, then Alabama. I always look at the road games, right? At Oklahoma and at A&M back-to-back is tough. Can you go 1-1 in those? At Arkansas and Vandy are doable for Auburn. You know, even if you lose at home to Georgia, can you beat Mizzou at home? Yes. Can you beat Kentucky at home? Yes. Maybe you get to the Iron Bowl with 8 wins. Maybe you're trying to finish 9-3. I know that's seems like a pipe dream for Auburn based on what they've done the last few years, but you got to trust Hugh Freeze that they're going to land some quarterbacks in this portal and that they're going to continue to build, and those great recruiting classes they've been bringing in, that those kids continue to mature and develop. Love their receiving core. But, you know, I say Auburn ceiling 9-3. For Florida, they open with something called Long Island. Then they get South Florida. Back-to-back tough roadies after that. At LSU to open SEC play, and at Miami. That's got to be the earliest LSU and Florida have ever played. September 13th. But can you go 1-1 in that stretch, Billy Napier? Then it's an open date, home for Texas. They'll actually get to face DJ Lagway this time around, hopefully. Then you're at A&M, tough road game. Home for Mississippi State, open date. Georgia and Jacksonville. At Kentucky and at Ole Miss. And then home for Tennessee and home for Florida State. With Kentucky sliding in there, that looks like a little bit more of a, you know, not an absolute behemoth of a November, but it's still a pretty behemoth of November. We'll see what Florida State is. Again, what does Ole Miss look like with Austin Simmons at quarterback? You have to assume maybe not as good as you were with Jackson Dart. But for Florida, I'm going to say 7 wins, 8 tops. I think that's the best you can do with that schedule. It's a pretty tough one. Road games at LSU, at Miami, at A&M, at Kentucky, at Ole Miss, and the neutral site against Georgia. I mean, how many games you get in the swamp? Looking at Georgia, Marshall, Austin Peay at home right out of the gates. You're 2-0. Then you're at Tennessee. An interesting one. Week 3. Man, what's the SEC doing with these early season big dogs? Big matchups. Then you got an open date. Then you're home for Bama. Interesting one. Then you're home for Kentucky. At Auburn. Home for Ole Miss. That's a pretty tough four-week stretch between open dates. Bama, Kentucky, and Ole Miss all at home and a road trip at Auburn. But, you know, can you win 3 out of 4 of those? Then you are against Florida and Jacksonville, at Mississippi State, home for Texas. I love that one is on November 15th, towards the end of the year. Big, big game. Then you finish with Charlotte and then Georgia Tech in Atlanta. You know, again, for Georgia, the expectation should be 10-2 or better. Should be a playoff team. Same thing like Alabama. Kentucky, you open with Toledo. Week 2, you host Ole Miss. Good Lord, right out of the gates. Mark Stoops, you better revamp this roster. Then it's Eastern Michigan. So if you could beat Ole Miss, you could start 3-0. Open date, September 27th, you're at South Carolina and at Georgia, and then another open date. That's a toughie. I mean, you're going to go a month without playing a home game. Then October 18th, you come home against Texas, home against Tennessee, at Auburn, home for Florida, and then you finish. This is navigatable back end of November for Kentucky. It's Florida at home, Tennessee Tech, at Vandy, at Louisville. If you're halfway decent, Kentucky, you have a chance to win those 4. But I think 6-6, maybe 7 wins if everything goes right for Kentucky. Again, they lost a ton to the portal. You got to rebuild that receiving core. Is Rock Vandergrift the quarterback again? Does he get any better? A lot of questions for Kentucky. How about LSU? They will open at Clemson. Good Lord, what a tough one out of the gates again for Brian Kelly, who seems to lose his week 1 game every year. Then it's Louisiana Tech, Florida, and Southeastern Louisiana all at home. Maybe getting Florida that early in the season. Maybe that's a chance at a win there against DJ Lagway. Again, you'll have Garrett Nussmeier back. We'll discuss that in a little bit. Then you're at Ole Miss, and then your open date. Again, no Jackson Dart. Is that maybe easier for LSU having the quarterback advantage at that point? Then you get South Carolina in Baton Rouge, but Lenore Sellers, we know, is looking to take this team to new heights. But advantage for LSU, you get them at home. You're at Vandy, who loses Diego Pavia, so that one becomes way more winnable again. Home for A&M. Home team just seems to hold serve in this one, so it feels like LSU has to win that one. Then your open date. Then you're at Alabama. Home for Arkansas. Home for Western Kentucky. And you finish the season at Oklahoma. I think LSU, a chance there that you could go, maybe you get to that Oklahoma game and you're 9-2, and maybe that game is the difference between going 10-2 and 9-3. But I think that's LSU's ceiling. I mean, that's a tough schedule, and man, it almost feels like you gotta win that opener at Clemson. You have to put a W in the column. If not, I mean, it's going to be another 8-4, 9-3 at best for LSU. And lastly, in this segment, we'll touch on Ole Miss. August 30th, they open with Georgia State at Kentucky in week 2. Again, tough going on the road in conference in week 2. Home for Arkansas, home for Tulane, home for LSU. So a nice little 3-game home slate there. Then an open date. How about October 11th? They host Washington State. That's a weird one, just in the middle of October. And then you're at Georgia, at Oklahoma, home for South Carolina. Good Lord. Tough 3-game stretch there. And then you finish November off with the Citadel at home, Florida at home, open date, and at Mississippi State for the Egg Bowl. So Mississippi State or Ole Miss, you could see the finish line there, right? Like, if you can get to November 1st and you're able to beat South Carolina in Oxford, remember you beat them last year, maybe you got a chance to finish 10-2 and make the playoff and do something you didn't do this year. But that is that's certainly tough. All right. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, we'll switch to the other teams in the SEC and their 2025 schedules. That is coming your way here in just a sec. But first, I'll remind you guys, today's episode presented to you by our friends over at the Game Time app. And Game Time, they got that new feature called the Game Time Picks. Going to make getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. They're going to filter out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats. Of course, their curation process makes it easier to save more on concerts, sports, comedy, theater, whatever it is. Don't waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. Get the Game Time Picks in the Game Time app. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. And, of course, you could take out all the guesswork from buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. If you've never used them before, you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem our code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, get $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. It's like we always say. What time is it? It is game time. Also want to remind you guys, the Texas Bowl is fastly approaching this New Year's Eve at 2:30 Central. The Baylor Bears and the LSU Tigers will be battling it out on the gridiron of NRG Stadium in Houston, Texas for the 2024 Kinders Texas Bowl. All tickets are on sale now. Again, Baylor, LSU, New Year's Eve at NRG Stadium. What more could you ask for to close out an unforgettable year like 2024? So if you're ready for football and fireworks, head to Kinders, Kinders, TexasBowl.com right now to grab your tickets, suites, group opportunities, and more. Seriously, right now, these tickets are going fast. If you're an LSU fan or you just live in the Houston area and you went to another SEC school, but you want to go see some Big 12 versus SEC action, go check out KindersTexasBowl.com. Don't miss it. Visit KindersTexasBowl.com. All right, rolling along here, Locked On SEC. We've got a loaded show today. We got to get to some news going on around the conference. So let's dive back into it as we're breaking down the 2025 SEC schedules that were released. We ran through the first half of the conference, so let's dive back into it and get to the second half of the conference schedules. And we jump into the Mississippi State Bulldogs. They will open at Southern Miss. Interesting, Jeff Lebby and team going on the road to start the season. Then you're home against Arizona State, and that one suddenly gets a lot more tough because it's Arizona State. They're in the playoff right now. They have overachieved, and so that one is that's a tough one. Then you come home you stay home for Alcorn State and Northern Illinois, and then you finally get an SEC play in Week 5 with Tennessee coming to Starkville. Then you're on the road at A&M. Then your open date. Then you're at Florida. Home for Texas, at Arkansas, home for Georgia, at Mizzou, open date, Egg Bowl. This is still a tough schedule for Mississippi State, but I'm going to set the ceiling, just realistic, I'm going to say 6-6, right? If Lebby can, first day, they didn't win a conference game this year, so the expectation, win a conference game or two next year. But I think, a tough Arizona State game in non-conference, if you lose that one, look, 6-6. Get to a bowl game, and it'll be a step forward in year 2 for Lebby and his staff. How about Missouri? They'll open with Central Arkansas at home. They'll open with Kansas. That's a fun one. Then UL Lafayette, and then they open SEC play with South Carolina at home, and then UMass. Missouri opens with 5 straight home games and then their open date. I love that because it means you can start strong. Again, tough ones at home against Kansas and South Carolina. But if you can win those and hold serve, you get your open date, and then Alabama comes to Como. What do they look like? But then here come your road games. Then you're at Auburn in late October, then at Vandy, winnable, open date, home for A&M, home for Mississippi State, and then you finish on the road at Oklahoma and out at Arkansas. I think this is a navigatable schedule for Mizzou. I know I'm saying that with a couple of teams, but I think on the worst, maybe 8-4, 9-3, possibly 10-2 if they get the quarterback situation figured out. I just love, they don't go on the road until late October. They finally play a game away. So I kind of like how the schedule sets up, but tough that you get all your road games on the back end of the schedule. How about Oklahoma? You open with Illinois State. Michigan comes to Oklahoma in week 2. That's a toughie. Then you're at Temple. That's interesting. You opened with Temple at home last year, so you give them a return trip, but you should win that one. Then you're home for Auburn, then an open date. Then you get Kent State. Then it's Texas in Dallas, the rivalry game. At South Carolina, tough one in late October. Home for Ole Miss, at Tennessee. Man, you talk about a brutal, tough stretch for Oklahoma in that month of October. Texas, at South Carolina, home for Ole Miss, and at Tennessee. I mean, there's only one game in Norman in those 4 games, and those are 4 big dogs. Then on the backstretch, your schedule, again, not easy. Open date, at Bama, home for Mizzou, home for LSU. Oof. Oklahoma, I'm going to say, look, you went 6-6 this year. You got bowl eligibility. I'm going to say 7-5. It will be an improvement off this year. You're moving forward with Brent Venables, but that schedule's pretty tough. South Carolina, you open with Virginia Tech and Atlanta. Then it's South Carolina State. Then it's home for Vandy. Then you're at Mizzou, home for Kentucky. So far, so good. I like that opening 5 for South Carolina. Again, we expect they're going to be much better with Lenore Sellers back and seasoned. You get your open date, then you're at LSU. So you get 2 weeks to prepare for a road trip at LSU. Home for Oklahoma, home for Bama, at Ole Miss. That's a tough 4-game stretch. At LSU, home for Oklahoma, home for Bama, and at Ole Miss. Then it's an open date. Then you're at A&M, home for Coastal Carolina, home for Clemson. Oof. That's tough, man. As much as I want to buy into South Carolina as a playoff team next year, they're going to have to be really special to get to 10-2 and get to the playoff. Not crazy, but I think that's the ceiling for South Carolina, 10-2. Tennessee, they will open with Syracuse in Atlanta week 1. Interesting matchup, orange versus orange. Then it's home for East Tennessee State. Georgia, week 3, coming to Knoxville. Then UAB comes to Knoxville. Then you're at Mississippi State. Then you're open date. So if you could beat Georgia at home, great chance there to start 5-0 for Tennessee. And Nico's, junior year? Then out of the open date, it's home for Arkansas, at Bama, at Kentucky, home for Oklahoma, open date, home for New Mexico State, at Florida, and then home for Vandy. I love that schedule for Tennessee. I think that sets up very well. I think you get enough of a breather in there with some doable opponents. I don't see any reason why Josh Heupel and company can't go 10-2 with that schedule and get to the playoff. Maybe even better. Maybe 11-1 if things fall their way. Texas will open the season at Ohio State. Brutal game out of the gates to head up to the Horseshoe. Then you're home for San Jose State, home for UTEP, open date, home for Sam Houston. I mean, gosh, if you win that opener against Ohio State, you're starting 4-0. At Florida, that one's going to be much more difficult with DJ Lagway. Remember, they avoided DJ Lagway this year. They faced Aiden Warner. Then you're against Oklahoma and Dallas, then at Kentucky and at Mississippi State. Goodness. So the whole month of October, Darrell K. Royal Stadium does not host a game for Texas. So they are gone on the road for a month. Then you come home in November for Vandy in Austin, open date, at Georgia, that big one. Got to get the monkey off your back, Sark. You got to find a way to finally beat Kirby. And then you finish at home against Arkansas and home against A&M. I think they should win both of those. So a 10-win season for Texas, but maybe 9-3. Maybe 9-3. Danger spots are at Ohio State, home for or at Georgia. I think at Florida is a pitfall for Texas. We'll see. See what Florida looks like when we get there. Rounding this thing out, we got A&M home against UTSA, home against Utah State, at Notre Dame week 3. Mike Elko, that is a tough one. Then you get an open date. Then you come home for 3 straight. Home against Auburn, home against Mississippi State, home against Florida. Those could be all wins. Then you're at Arkansas and at LSU. That LSU one, I just think, they always lose in Baton Rouge. Then an open date. Then you're at Mizzou, home for South Carolina, home for Samford, and at Texas. I think that's it's a tough schedule for A&M, but I kind of like the on again, off again, on again, off again. Like beatable team and then tough game, beatable team and then tough game. So I'll put A&M at 9-3 with that schedule. They should take a step forward. They were knocking on the door this year and finished 8-4, but 9-3 should be where A&M is. And then lastly, Vandy, Charleston Southern should win that one. At Virginia Tech, that'll be tough. At South Carolina will be really tough. Home for Georgia State, home for Utah State. So 3-2 maybe. Then you're at Bama, they'll lose that one. That's 3-3. Open dates, home against LSU, home against Missouri. Then you're at Texas, home for Auburn, open date, home for Kentucky, at Tennessee. Yeah, I think, look, Vandy was awesome this year. Clark Lee was an amazing job he did, but I think that's a pretty tough schedule. And no Diego Pavia, who replaces him at quarterback. Could be a rough go there for Clark Lee and company. All right, before we get to our interview with Kyle Kennard, so easiest and hardest schedules, I think I kind of tend towards. I like the schedule. Who did I like? I said that I liked. I liked Ole Miss's schedule. LSU's, I think, is tough. I think Florida's is doable. I think Bama's is doable. And then Missouri, I like their schedule. Tennessee, I liked as well. So, Oklahoma's just got a brutal one again. You knew that one was coming. All right. Before we move on, let's get to some news around the conference. Garrett Nussmeier announcing yesterday that he will be back at LSU for his senior season. Threw for almost 4,000 yards and 26 touchdowns. That's a big one. So talk about returning quarterbacks in the SEC next year, at least like more seasoned upperclassmen. You got Garrett Nussmeier. You got Taylon Green, potentially at Arkansas. He's not made an official announcement yet, but waiting to hear that one. But a big return for Garrett Nussmeier. Why do I say that? Because you got the hardest part figured out if you're LSU. And think about Joe Burrow, how he improved in year 2 as the LSU starter. I know you're going to say I'm crazy, but go back and look at Joe Burrow's 2018. It wasn't as good as Nussmeier's 2024. Same thing with Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels improved so much in year 2 as an LSU starter. Year 1 was just okay. Year 2 was tremendous. Nussmeier kind of had a better year 1 as LSU starter than Burrow and Jaden. Can he take that Heisman leap in year 2 as LSU starter? Both those guys did. Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels did. Can Garrett Nussmeier do that? That would be tremendous for him. He had a bunch of 400-yard games already this season. Needs to cut out the turnovers. But that is big news there for LSU. How about South Carolina? Some news with them as we know Dowell Loggins, their offense coordinator, left to go be the head coach at Appalachian State. Well, news coming out this week that they may promote within. Mike Shula expected to be South Carolina's new offensive coordinator. He was an offensive analyst, but will now presumably take over play calls. That is according to Chris Clark of On3. Of course, he's a longtime son of Don Shula, was the head coach of Alabama back in the day. He joined Shane Beamer at South Carolina in 2023 and could be the new OC there. So let's see Mike Shula, what he can do. Also, speaking of South Carolina, some honors there, some postseason honors. Kyle Kennard, who we are going to have on the show coming up next, he was named Defensive Player of the Year by the SEC. Kyle Kennard led all SEC defenders with 15.5 tackles for a loss and 11.5 sacks. Also, Dylan Sampson at Tennessee named Offensive Player of the Year, rewriting the Tennessee record books with 1,485 rush yards and 22 touchdowns. Other postseason awards, Alex Rayner, the Kentucky kicker, was Special Teams Player of the Year. Freshman of the Year, Lenore Sellers at South Carolina. Newcomer of the Year, Diego Pavia at Vanderbilt. Your Jacobs blocking trophy was Kelvin Banks and Will Campbell, the Texas and LSU O-linemen. Scholar Athlete of the Year was Brady Cook at Missouri. And your Coach of the Year was none other than Clark Lee at Vanderbilt. Definitely deserved it. Guided Vanderbilt to a 6-win season after being absolutely putrid through their first couple of years. So a few other notes here. Dylan Sampson, Kyle Kennard, both named, got individual all SEC honors from the AP, but Sampson took home the SEC's Offensive Player of the Year honor from the AP, and Kyle Kennard, Defensive Player as well. Before we roll on here, Alabama quarterback Dylan Lonergan is set to enter the transfer portal. News coming out yesterday. Jalen Milrose obviously going to move on to the NFL. Keelan Russell, their quarterback recruit that they're bringing in, was named the Gatorade National Player of the Year on Wednesday. So can he compete for playing time in year one? We will see. Over Kentucky, Mark Stoops had ankle surgery this week. The news was shared by WKYT in Lexington. Stoops underwent an ankle replacement surgery and is hoping to return to work as soon as possible. Over at Oklahoma, Andrell Anthony, wide receiver, entered the transfer portal. So he joins the likes of J.J. Hester, Nick Anderson, Jalil Farouk, Jaquez Petaway. I mean, the entire wide receiver room at Oklahoma entering the portal. They have battled injuries all year long. Over at Arkansas, they lose starting O-lineman Addison Nichols to the transfer portal. They've lost a ton of O-linemen there at Arkansas. There's debate on will they even have enough guys to start the bowl game to protect Taylon Green. Something to keep an eye on there. Arkansas linebacker Brad Spence also entering the portal. LSU D lineman JVR Suggs officially entered the portal, and LSU insider Shea Dixon at On3 logging an expert prediction that LSU will land Florida cornerback transfer Jakeem Jackson. Over at Texas A&M, On3 predicting A&M will land Texas Tech transfer wide receiver Micah Hudson. Big time transfer there. South Carolina, their edge Elijah Davis has officially entered the NCAA transfer portal. Over at Auburn, On3 has the latest. Oklahoma quarterback transfer Jackson Arnold. They have him down to Auburn and Mississippi State. So can Hugh Freeze land the Oklahoma transfer quarterback? That'd be a big get for him. And at Vandy, they landed a big one. Alabama transfer linebacker Keanu Coate has committed to Vanderbilt. Was a 5-star recruit in 2021. So big time get there for Clark Lee and company. All right, when we return here on Locked On SEC, we will get to our conversation with the SEC Defensive Player of the Year, Kyle Kennard. But first, I'll remind you guys, today's episode presented by our friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to take on the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now, new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets. If you win, the FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, go check out FanDuel.com. Get signed up today. And like we said, you'll get started with that $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. And they got all the playoff games up there as well. If you want to get in on Tennessee catching 7.5 in the horseshoe against Ohio State, you can do so over at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, we're along here Locked On SEC. And yesterday we were able to catch up with SEC Defensive Player of the Year, Kyle Kennard of the South Carolina Gamecocks. Here was some of that conversation from the Lombardi Award. Pleasure to be coming to you from the Lombardi Award here in Houston. One of the guys who was a finalist tonight for the award is a guy who's been racking up all the awards this week. He is defensive end Kyle Kennard from South Carolina. Welcome in, man.
What's going on?
How about, as we discussed, it's just been officially announced, SEC Defensive Player of the Year. How about that?
That's sort of a blessing, man.
What's this all been like, this whirlwind year, playing at Georgia Tech, coming into the SEC, playing at South Carolina, having an immediate impact, and having the season you guys have? What's this all been like for you?
It's just been a good testimony to the work I put in throughout the offseason, and then the training that I did, and then the type of offseason that I had, definitely for sure. And then also, wait, what was the last part of the question? Yeah, just this whole season. I mean, it's had to be just your head spinning in a new place and having immediate success, right? Yeah. So definitely most games I ever won in the season. So I'm glad to claim somewhere where I win. It worked out it worked out good for both sides of the party. Me coming in, and then helping them, and then they helped me get to where I wanted to be today. And then it's just been a short of a blessing for sure.
Take me through that decision, because you could have gone anywhere last year, when you're making the decision. What sold you on South Carolina that said, this is where I got to be?
I tell everyone that the people in the building sold me. When they came to visit me, the whole defensive staff in my living room, they had a plan, like a real plan for me. They laid out everything where they saw me in their program and their defensive scheme. I'm not saying other coaches didn't do that, but I feel like they were realer about it. And then also, just when I got there, the people in the building, I mean, everyone was genuine. Everyone had your best interest in heart. So that's something I really resonated with.
And then you have the freak freshman come in and Dylan Stewart playing on the other side. I mean, you guys for a while, just an absolute wrecking crew this year. What was that like? I mean, it's almost one of those things you enjoy in your teammates' success. If you're not getting a sack, he's getting a sack. You're celebrating for him, right?
Yeah, for sure, man. That guy's a freak, man. He's so young, and he has all of the intangibles that you have to train for. It's like, I just told someone else, it's like God just dropped it in his genetic makeup, and he just has the tools. And he's only a freshman, and like with him getting better each and every year, no doubt in my mind he'd be a lottery pick in the draft when it's time for him to come out.
Did you have a sack goal in your mind when you came in this year, or it was just, just make the most of the opportunity?
Definitely, it was a make the most of the opportunity kind of thing. But me and my trainer, we definitely had a double-digit sack goal in mind. I had that in the back of my head for sure.
11.5. I mean, to lead the SEC, and now we're starting to see it. You first team All SEC. That's an incredible accomplishment in its own. Winner of the Bronco Nagurski Trophy the other night. AP SEC Defensive Player of the Year named today. I mean, and now Lombardi Award finalist. I mean, this is just, it's got to be a testament to, man, all the hard work paying off. And it's nice to get the pat on the back sometimes, right?
No, definitely. Man, sometimes as an athlete, you try to shy away from it because you don't want to let it and affect your head negatively.
Yeah.
So, like, let your head get too big or whatnot. But, I mean, it's always good to take a step back sometimes and just be proud of yourself and what you did and how far you came along.
Because everything's always team. This is one where, no, it's actually individual. You're getting honored as the job you did.
Which is a great testament to my team. Once again, so that's the beauty of football. I mean, like, even the individual stuff is like, you look back on the sack, it's like I couldn't have never done that without the team. But you know what I'm saying? But it is beautiful to get individual recognition. I can't even lie and be naive and say it isn't.
Right. And Monster John, 6 sacks last year, Georgia Tech, 11.5 this year at South Carolina. You born and raised in the Atlanta area, right? Sandy Spring?
I was born in Flint, Michigan.
Okay, but you grew up
I moved from Flint, Michigan when I was 9, and then I did my growing up in Savannah-ish and Atlanta-ish.
Okay. Yep. And I've heard the high school football in Atlanta is pretty strong. What was that like?
I mean, I played when I was in high school, it was 5A, so 2 regions below 7A where all the grades you hear come from. But, I mean, it was pretty good football. I mean, good football was everywhere in the state of Georgia, so it was a blessing. And it was like advantageous playing that in high school and coming to college with it.
Did you imagine when you're playing in high school that this is a few years later, this is where you would be?
I mean, I shot for the stars and everything I did, but, I mean, I did not know this was the star I was shooting for. Exactly.
Right. Looking back on this season, I mean, what an incredible season you guys had, and Coach Beamer and the whole staff did an incredible job. But is there a favorite moment looking back, or a favorite game that you look back at and go, that it's going to stick with me for the rest of my life?
Yeah, I hate to say this in the state of Texas, but the Texas A&M game was a pretty good game for me. I mean, it was a pretty fun game. I mean, to just be that type of atmosphere. We're in all black. It's a night game, and it's their top 10 team tied up at halftime. I mean, both teams are getting juiced up at halftime, and then for us to come out and pitch a second half shutout, and our offense scored 24. I mean, sheesh.
Yeah, and I think the timing of that, they had just come off the second half rally against LSU, and Marcel's the quarterback now, and they're feeling pretty good. And you mentioned, I mean, it's a close game at half, but that second half, it was like a snowball rolling down a mountain that just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, night games at home in Colombia it can get rocking in that place.
It was crazy.
What are you going to miss most about? I mean, you're here a year, but I'm sure you developed some great bonds and relationships and all that, and the fans you became a fan favorite very quickly. What are you going to miss most about
That's
your
what I was going to say, but probably most importantly, I'm going to miss the relationships that I made here in the building. I mean, there in South Carolina, and people I met. I mean, I made some lifelong relationships and friends. So that's what I'm going to miss most importantly. And I'm going to definitely the fans and the way that they interacted and supported throughout the season.
Did you find a favorite restaurant in Colombia?
I kind of fell in love with Old Chicago.
Okay.
So shout out to Old Chicago.
What's the go-to order there?
I get a bacon burger, barbecue bacon burger, and fries, strawberry lemonade.
Pretty legit barbecue sauce?
Good.
Okay. So some people are weird with their barbecue. Some people like dry, some people like wet. Or where do you fall?
What is dry barbecue sauce?
Like with like the barbecue with no sauce.
Oh, okay.
That means you did the seasoning, right?
In between.
Yeah, because you got to have some kind of sauce.
Yeah, for sure. It's
got to be on there. Do you have a favorite food item you go for?
Probably chicken.
Okay.
Something like that. Any type of chicken.
Yeah. I'm sure and when you're got to keep your body in shape, right? You got to watch a little bit what you eat.
Definitely. So, luckily, chicken is a good protein for us. So,
yeah. What's you guys finished the season strong? That win at Clemson was really nice. I guess a little bit disappointing that you don't make the playoff, but obviously, I think Coach Beamer said it the other day. I mean, Citrus Bowl's first pick, and they picked you guys. Kind of sends a message like we were the next best team.
Right.
What's that like to kind of get ready for a game like this? That for the team to get ready for a game like this that you'll be leaving, but they can build a lot of momentum going into next season with Lenoris at quarterback.
I mean, it's a great game to be in. Obviously, shout out to the Citrus Bowl for even thinking about us and. Like you said, it's the number one bowl outside of the playoff bowls, and then for them to even be thinking about us for that game was just a blessing in itself. And then I feel like we're going to see something we never saw from South Carolina in the bowl game. Like it's going to be a huge stepping stone. I mean, I feel like the bowl season is a way to build off of 2024 and then lead into 2025, and we're going to see some electric.
We saw a little bit of Lenoris last year, but I think there were a lot of question marks coming into the season. Like, well, if it could all come together, he could be really good, but like. That dude, by the end of the year, I don't know if there's a quarterback playing better than him. What did you see from Lenoris as the year went along? It looked like confidence in himself, right?
His confidence blew up. I mean, we never left his side. I mean, whenever he felt like he was going through struggles or whenever the people felt like he was going through struggles, we always told him, like, no, you're still that guy. I mean, you're still the reason we score. I mean, if they don't score, they don't win. So for you to put up points for us to win games, I mean, you're that guy, brother. I mean, so we just stayed in his ear about how good he was, and towards the last 6 games, he just shifted the momentum and just turned electric.
Yeah.
Turned electric.
We got a couple of fellow SEC linemen here today, finalists for the Lombardi Award. You guys didn't play Texas, but you did play LSU. Did you go against Will one-on-one that game?
I did go against Will, man. I did go against Will.
How tough was that?
He's a good player. He's nimble with his footwork. He's good at passing. He's not getting off his spot. I just told someone else he's not good at getting off his spot. He's a good player.
Who was there a big difference going from Georgia Tech to ACC to South Carolina SEC? I mean, some of these old linemen in the SEC, I mean, they're big boys.
Yeah. I mean, there was not really, but I mean,
good football players are good football players.
There's not really a huge. I'll say the difference is like the more so like the atmosphere, the fans, and the how serious football is in the SEC. Like when they say it just means more, it really just means more.
Yeah.
But as far as the playing, I mean, it's more running. There's more than the ball there, but not even still like it's 2024. The SEC is throwing the ball too. I mean, Ole Miss, look at Ole Miss. I mean. Yeah. It's not that big of a difference. I can't lie.
Yeah, but you bring up a great point. I mean, that's what everybody says, and that's where I think like the night games make a difference in this conference. Yeah. I mean, the home field can get so vibing and rocking, and I think that really came into play to help you guys a lot this year.
Definitely, a lot of times.
What was the toughest road environment y'all went to this year that you remember?
What was our record on the road?
Yeah. Y'all do well on the road. So you're not giving any roses. No roses to any of them. Okay.
I give it to Alabama since we lost to them, and obviously they hold 100K, right? Like, so I give it to Alabama. But any other stadium we went to, I don't think we didn't experience nothing like William Bryce at another stadium.
Yeah.
I think like.
There's nobody else playing Sandstorm.
And we beat everyone else, so it wouldn't get that loud. So yeah.
I love it, Kyle. What's the next step here as the season has kind of wraps up and all this? What's next for you?
I plan to pursue my freshman opportunities after football. After college.
Okay, and start getting into the whole grind of everything that takes post football. Well, congrats on not just a great career, but a great season, man, individually. I mean, you deserve all these accolades, and I know your phone's blowing up with all the big announcements and everything. Really appreciate you taking some time in, and best of luck to the next level, all right? Yes, all right. He is Kyle Kennard, SEC Defensive Player of the Year. We got more show coming up right after this.
Thanks again to Kyle Kennard for joining us. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. We went long today, but we had a lot of stuff to get in, and certainly with the 2025 schedules to get excited about. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. Keep coming back and checking us out each and every day. And hey, for your second listen, we talk Gamecocks. Check out our buddy Chris Marler, who does Locked On Gamecocks. Make that your second listen. Come on back and check us out. We're updating you each and every day with all the latest news in the transfer portal right here on Locked On SEC. Subscribe. If you haven't followed, subscribe to us on YouTube and the podcast form as well. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Coming back and see us.